Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Practitioner-Scholar, a Penn Chief Learning Officer podcast. I am your host, Julio Zelaya. To familiarize you, for those who don't know, the Penn CLO Executive Program is a program through the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. The course of study focuses on organizational learning, leadership, and development within the public and private sectors. It is also known as a Practitioner-Scholar program, where there is an academic research component, meaning what is learned can be applied through the workplace through best practices. I'm a current student of this program, and our guest is an alumna of the program. In this edition, we will meet Dr. Janet Duliga. Our guest today is a distinguished executive with over 25 years of experience in corporate leadership, human resources, and law. Currently, the Chief Corporate Officer Americas at Prada Group. She brings extensive knowledge from the retail and fashion industries. Her impressive educational background includes a doctorate in organizational learning and leadership from the University of Pennsylvania, the Penn CLO program, a law degree from the University of San Diego, and a degrees in psychology and public policy. She has held key positions at major companies like Joann Stores and Luxottica, overseeing HR and legal functions. Her unique blend of legal expertise, psychological insight, and HR strategy have been crucial in her leadership roles across various retail environments. So welcome, Dr. Janet Duliga. Can I call you Janet?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Julio. And I appreciate the invite. And I'm so pleased to be here with you. I can't wait for our conversation.
So I'm looking forward to today's podcast, and the word that comes to mind is fun. So let me tell you more. Our topic is the serious research of workplace fun. So we're in for a treat today. We'll be speaking with a researcher who has conducted a groundbreaking study on this very topic. Her findings are truly enlightening. So she discovered that employees generally view management-sponsored fun events positively, valuing them more for the social connections they foster than for specific activities. And very interestingly, while staff appreciate these events as a break from work and see them as reflections of company values, her study found little lasting impact on day-to-day working life. That is very interesting. So our guest researcher today will share insights on how organizations can make these fun activities more effective, suggesting they should be inclusive, frequent, and aligned with employee preferences. It's a fascinating look at how companies can improve workplace culture through fun. And I can't wait to dig deeper into the details with Janet. So, my dear Janet, how do you go from being a lawyer, a full-time HR executive, to entering a doctoral program, the CLO program?
Oh, I'd love to tell you the long way around, but I'll kind of keep it as succinct as possible. I think, I just followed my interests, and I think you'll find that a lot in some of the other students. If, as someone gets to know them in the CLO program, there is that kind of that saying, like, follow your passion, and you kind of don't really need to worry as much about managing your career. And I don't know if that's 100% true, but I definitely found for myself finding things that I was curious about, which are plenty, and being able to follow through on them and really do some research was one of the greatest benefits of the CLO program for me, because I didn't really know how to do that before I got there. I had done psychological research, which is a little bit different, more like clinical type of things. And so I think for me, that opened a door where I could really pursue something that I just had a great curiosity about.
And I love that. Don't follow your passion, follow your curiosity.
Oh, that could be my motto.
That's a powerful, it's an office motto there. So you were very curious about law, psychology, and I know psychology was very important as a pivot point for everything you're doing. Tell me more.
That's an interesting area because psychology often is just about the individual, but then you've got these broader areas of psychology. And for me, initially, I did really pursue that one-on-one clinical kind of psychological, theoretical pursuit of academia when I got a master's in clinical psychology. And I think you learn things along the way in your career. And for me, I think that one-to-one wasn't exactly what I wanted to spend my entire day with or my entire day doing. And I think eventually, as I turned toward the law, which was certainly had a great psychological component to it, I kept kind of following my interests in my career. And so I was practicing in house somewhere, and I really noticed what the human resources people were doing and how they were working and the things that they were developing and designing and programs that they were putting into place. And also this idea of what is talent and can you articulate it, can you quantify things, can you measure things. I was very curious about that as well, so that aligned a lot with psychology as a background. So I think these different pursuits I kept following. And even when I was practicing law and eventually got into human resources, I found someone who was doing organizational psychology, which was super fascinating to me too. And the way she would think about how the company was moving forward or the way a program would impact a certain audience and help them achieve peak performance or be more connected or perhaps find the right path for them if they were on maybe a career path that wasn't as satisfying to them. So I think there were all these different dynamics at play in an organization. It can be very interesting. I know corporate life, it's like a meme to be very boring and uninteresting, but I think it's the human drama unfolding every day. So I love it. And I think the CLO program and what I was able to study and learn and the people I met are a huge part of keeping that interest going for me.
So I love that we see life not as a one
No.
horizontal line, but a combination of several pivot points, and you were following that passion. So I'm wondering, let's imagine that moment where you already had a doctorate. You already had a doctorate in law. So you were raising three kids. You were the sole breadwinner of the house, as the main breadwinner of the house at that moment. What got you into thinking, okay, I need a new doctorate? What got you from A to B?
I think there was a little bit of regret that I hadn't pursued a doctorate in psychology and I'd stopped there because I think more doors can open to you. And it's for me, a career and a lifetime passion around a topic or how you spend your days. You want as many doors open as possible so you can pick and choose and follow different things. So I think in a way that was in the back of my mind. And also, there's a saying, and my mom used to say it to me, it was like, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. And so I think there's a little bit of that too. It's like, why not one more thing? But the actual event was probably working with Annie McKee, who I think her name has come up in a couple different sessions here. She's a very inspiring individual. Her career path, her life purpose, everything that she does. But we worked one-on-one and with a team that I had in a company, and we were conducting a project, and she taught us how to do live research essentially, as we were going, like, what is qualitative data? And we were all like, our minds were just expanding as we were realizing we were evolving a company while conducting this research project with her team. And I thought, gosh, that's the kind of work that I love. And she asked me to talk about it as part of the project to this CLO program. And I met many of the students at that time. And that was quite a few years ago. And I thought, wow, this is an interesting thing that people are doing here. And I talked to her more about it. And there I was, eventually part of the student body.
So I love that you were following that curiosity spark and you were sharing something that got you excited. But I love the idea of, okay, if you want to get it done, give it to somebody that's very busy. And that's a common concern for people thinking about a
Yeah.
mid-career doctorate. So what happens if I go there and I have too many things to work around? What happens if I drop out? What advice would you give to those people who are very busy, very successful individuals and are planning for a mid-career doctorate?
First, I'll say when you get to the program, if that's your path, there are many different ways that people do the CLO program or participate in it and become what they aspire to be and achieve their doctorate. I think for me, I needed to plan out my calendar. I needed to look at it as like part of what I was doing with my time because, in effect, all of the things that I was learning, I was practicing also at my company or the different companies I was working with. And they were benefiting quite a bit from this excitement and curiosity and gathering of people together to learn things. So I think it was a bit part of my job. And I had the support of my leaders as well. So that really, I think, made a big difference too. And people do change jobs quite a bit when they're in the program or have life changes, I should say. So for me, I think part of it was being planful and having chunks of time where I could really concentrate, but always kind of keeping at it, keeping at the reading. And I took the reading very seriously because I wanted to learn. And I think some people might be a little more strategic about like, what's the most important thing I have to know and read, because the well is pretty endless on what you could read for each of the blocks and each of the programs and for your own research and dissertation planning.
So let's get to your dissertation because I know it's a lot of fun, literally.
Yeah.
So you began very interested in the topic of organizational fun. But I know that as a researcher, you approach this with a more
I did.
cynical view. And when we were discussing, I was surprised by the word a cynical view. Can you tell me more what sparked that interest in organizational fun?
I think, again, it's a little bit out in the culture is that corporations try to do trust falls and team building that falls flat sometimes, or the company says one thing but does something different. And so I thought maybe this space of let's get everybody together and have a culture of fun might be might not be exactly what the top leaders think it is. But on the other hand, I was coming from an organization that was uniquely joyful and fun. And I knew it was different when I was there. And not everybody gets to have that experience. So I think I was looking at both of those things and wondering, how do you hit those right notes? How does a company really nail it when it comes to having people connect with fun or having people enjoy moments together at work? And if by virtue of a company sponsoring something, does that make it not fun? Does that kind of like take it away somehow? And I think the answer is sometimes, and it depends. And that's a very lawyerly response to this. It depends. But I think there's a lot to know and learn and think about when a company is throwing millions of dollars into events, which many companies do. Being thoughtful and precise about it maybe could be helpful. And I think that's where my research comes in.
And I love the response. It depends. There was a professor in our current block that said, it depends is the right answer to any question. And I found that, okay, it depends. So I think we can all relate to that cringy,
Yes.
forced fun. And when people say we're going to this team building experience, they roll their eyes and say, okay, don't force me to do this. So, how did you shape that into something that you could study?
I think I'll answer this in two parts. One is to, and maybe we'll get to this a little bit later, when you're planning your dissertation and the research for your dissertation, it's really great to have something that you're extremely interested in, that is this endless horizon of what can I learn? What can I know? And then I think to your question, I started to think, what is something that would be, I mean, any researcher wants to find out something a little bit new on what's already there. And this landscape was pretty open. Actually, I don't think it's not so full where there's no room to find something new. So I think there was room for that. And I felt like as I was learning about conducting qualitative research, I was able to, with the help of all the professors, that you really have to work at what is the right research question, but finding out a way to understand the human experience of fun and then putting that context of at work or at a company sponsored event, what did you experience? And that was really like the heart of what I was researching. And then I ended up talking to a lot of people about it, and it was as part of my interview process. And it was amazing to hear how they looked at it. I found a lot of very interesting, not a lot, I should say, I found some excellent robust studies that were more like case studies that weren't exactly going directly at fun necessarily, but there was some element of that. And I loved them. They were like amazing stories to read. So I think that's another thing about research I've always thought too is that if you are reading about it and it's like you're reading a story unfolding, that's the kind of research I like. So I think qualitative research is my thing. And I loved being able to read about what happened at a company. Was again back to that human drama unfolding, like, oh, what's going to happen when they introduce the scooters into the office? Or, oh no, they redesigned an office, or they decided we're having a culture of fun. When you announce that and you do no preparation, I think that can cause some challenges.
So you've sparked my curiosity and my imagination. And I know that there's a lot of our viewers and the people that hear this podcast that are CEOs or CHROs of companies. And let's imagine they get the email, we're planning on an extravagant zipline expedition. We're flying people everywhere to have fun. What would be your advice to those people? What are your findings based on your research?
I think that's a great idea. I don't think it's going to be for everybody. So you kind of have to like already manage that, the zip lining fund. But maybe your company, it's perfect for everyone. Focus on the spaces in between and don't make it all about the zip line. That's an excuse to get everybody together. It's an excuse to get, and I say that with positive intention and excuse. Like it's a good excuse. It's a good reason to get people together and to do something maybe they haven't ever done before, or to raise the adrenaline a little bit, because I think that's a whole other study. But I think having a little adrenaline or some emotional content is really helpful when your goal is to connect people and get people connected. And so that's the purpose, or that's the outcome, I should say, a lot of times with events where you're getting people together, whether it's for fun or something non-work specific, like a volunteering outing that you have offered to get everybody together during work time. You can go volunteer somewhere, clean a beach, work at some type of other philanthropic activity. All of those things are ways that people can turn off their work talk and work mind a bit and connect. And I think that's, so I would say go for it, do it, but make sure that you are not forcing people together, but creating spaces for them to be together and not have excuses to go to the hotel room and be on their computer. Or that's the main thing I would be concerned about is, can people really enjoy themselves and relax? Are you modeling it as leaders have really given people that space? Because that's what they get out of it. That's what people get out of these things.
And I love that we're seeing a parallel between what you mentioned, the way life goes. It's not the destination, it's about getting there and sparkling your interest in those key
Mhm.
turning points. I see the same in what you just said. It's not about the destination, but what's in between. Everything that happens just before the zip line or just before going to travel, and making sure that people enjoy the process as well. So, what did you learn about holiday parties? Because I know they're very popular amongst organization. What did you learn about that?
Interesting, because as you plan your research, you're trying to manage all the variables and the context and consider all your biases and the biases of the people as you go into the research, and a million things to think about. And I conducted my research, it was a limited period of time. And it so happened that it was in like what I would refer to as like Q1 blending into Q2 of a calendar year. So you're talking about like February, March, April. And when I was asking my
Mhm.
questions about, talk about a fun event your company sponsored, kind of, I didn't ask it like that, but let's just say that's the general context. For a lot of people, the most recent thing had been some type of holiday event, some type of holiday party. And they varied, but there were enough of my research participants that were talking about it that I even had a grid of what time of day was the holiday party, who was invited, was it spouses, partners, family, or none, and all of those things. And so I kind of have this like sheet of what matters, what makes it better, what makes it worse, who is interested. But I also did something in my research because I was looking across the time horizon of when you get the invite to something versus the day of, the day before. So that was pretty interesting too. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on the deep dive into it because my research is more interesting probably to me. But as related to the holiday party, I think it depends on your employee base, who is going to that party. I think time of day really matters because there's a lot of appreciation for doing things during the day because you're being paid, it's your work day, and you don't have to worry about some of the extraneous things outside of work that you might need to get a sitter, a dog walker, someone to care for someone or something related to your home or your home life. So you don't have to reorganize everything. You were already going to be at work. That's a really big deal. And I think sometimes people who are in a different stage of life who are planning things are planning maybe not always thinking about the stage of life of the greater audience or what that means to them. But on the other hand, there's also that specialness of an after hours event where people are having delicious food, great entertainment, beautiful atmosphere, people getting dressed up. So there are pros and cons, and I think it's good not to think too obviously about, oh, it's a holiday party. We go to a restaurant, we have the special dinner, we give out the prizes. Maybe it's different. And for example, if your work group is all younger women with younger children, as an example, and I'm not saying they're the only ones who have children, but like that was one of the participants, they do lunches and prizes that are very practical for someone in that group. And I think that was special.
And I find it so interesting, even those details on when do you send the invitations. So there is the secret sauce of making sure these events work. So I know you graduated in 2018, and a lot of things have changed in the world since then. COVID hit, and now everybody's talking about AI and changes in culture. If we were to go back in time and you already knew that COVID was hitting and AI and everything that's changing, would you have studied the same topic?
I think the research I did stands the test of time because it really is about those moments when people connect at work. And is that, I think maybe a frequency might have been like adding a frequency element to what I asked my participants about. But I thought a lot, before, during, and after COVID as the constant, like inevitable question is about going back to offices, being more together at work versus working remotely. And I think the research that I did has some relevance to that. And so maybe if I, could go back, I might have added a little bit, some different nuances. But I mean, we still like to connect. There's no doubt. And people like to be able to connect at work. I think the question is, can you do it as effectively remotely? And what could we do in person that would make the remote connections more powerful, better, if they need to be? I mean, I'm kind of assuming something there too. So, yeah, I mean, I think all of that is pretty relevant, and it just like it never stops. And there was a period of time, I think, where every HR person in the world was just like, could we just stop talking about this for 1 minute? you know, because it's a very difficult question to ask. What's the right amount of time together in it, quote, in an office or at work?
Yeah, but we all
We
crave connection, and I
do.
and
We
I
do.
love that concept. So in this dynamic, we've talked about leaders and the people who follow those leaders. So let's summarize your key findings for leaders, and then we'll talk about the people within organizations and what do they think about workplace fun. So if you were to give our CEOs, our CHROs, your top top advice, your top golden nuggets, what would those be?
I think the thing that I was most excited about was how clear through all of the data there was evidence that people really appreciate time away from the work and their desk to do something else with
Mhm.
people that they currently work with and also people that they don't see that often. So think of the events where they fly people in from somewhere. So just being able to be away from the desk while being paid, that came up a lot. Like that means my company values me because they're putting money on it. So that's one thing. And then talking to people about things that are not work. And people came to their own conclusion. Quite a few people spontaneously brought this up as an outcome is that it builds trust and that helps work. So I think those are the things I would think about. And then just as a researcher, part of the landscape I was looking at as I was looking through my findings and kind of understanding some of the meaning there. And I'm drawn to what is called positive psychology. And I think this concept of people are more resourceful when they feel positive and they're in kind of positive emotional spaces. And so if you can connect the two things, which is a positive emotional space because my company is paying me to spend time talking about things, not work, because they value me as a human being and they value my colleagues and they're living their company values through these events or moments that they're creating for us, then the company gets something back, which is my resourcefulness, my engagement, my name all the positive emotions that come from that kind of thing. So I think those are the things I think about all the time as a leader in large organizations with a diverse group of employees. How do I put them in a mind state, whether it's through activities or just how I interact every day, so that they're more resourceful? Because that's what we're paying people to do, is solve problems and to do things on behalf of the company. How much better if they're feeling great and feeling good and connected to do those things. So those are some of what my research supports, but also how I think about the human being in a workplace.
So, my fellow leaders, I hope you're taking notes. These are very powerful findings. So, fun at work and even sponsoring formal events that foster fun can be correlated to engagement, more trust, more security, and that psychological safety inside of organizations. Those are very powerful variables within an organization. So, leaders, take great notes. And so, Janet, we've talked about leaders, but what do people think about fun at work? And what happens to people when they get the invite? When they talk about, okay, we're planning a retreat, what do people think about fun at work?
Well, the research that I did would say that initially they're generally happy, excited. There's a positive response like, oh, this should be nice. And they're immediately thinking about the other people they're going to spend time with and that they get to connect with. So that's step one. Then I did ask people as
Mhm.
part of my research the day before, let's call it that 24-hour period, do your feelings change at all? And there's a little bit of a dip for some folks because they have to make arrangements in their life to do that thing. And so it's, oh, I gotta have to do this thing. And I was kind of curious, and I can't say this was part of my research, but about like introverts and extroverts and like what if you could put any of that on there. But I can't give you a positive answer. I have some theories. I think that if I had another chance, I might do more research on that. But people,
So, prospective
yeah,
students, that's a future area of research.
exactly. I think they do generally feel good about that invite. And I think the one thing I didn't say before and is so important in anything is know your people. Like get to know them, talk to them about fun events, about their career ambitions, about who they are as a human being and what they want, what motivates them. It's critical. And people change. So don't forget that as a leader, your people will change. And you can't assume that what was true 4 years ago is the same now or 2 years ago. So I think that seems as I say it, it's like, of course, everybody should know their people. But I think we just assume that we know them and everything's the same. And that's people are way more dynamic than that.
So I love it's one size does
Yes.
not fit all. It's not copying what another company did, but it's really figuring out, okay, who am I serving? Who, in what stage of their lives are people in? But I love that assumption of, okay, I need to study who am I serving to make sure that this caters to what people are into in that moment in time. And also, it's not the same planning the event than the day before. Actually, when you have to plan for a babysitter, when you have to take care of your cats and dogs at home, so it changes. But I love that concept of being aware of who you are serving. So you've done this amazing work that impacts both organizations, leaders, and how people envision fun at work. How has this changed your life as a researcher? What impact has it had in your life?
I think I'm more thoughtful about connecting with people maybe like the right before. Also, like what's our message? Are we sending a note out to remind people of an event or something like that? So like that's a very prescriptive kind of what did I learn? But it just reinforced my belief that the more safe people feel, the more positive I think safe is a great word, actually, but the more safe and positive they feel at work with their leader, even if things are tough, the better work can be for everyone. And the more resourceful, which I love that word, people can be. And I think it reinforced some of that, which I wasn't exactly expecting. And then I think I have a different eye on the way fun events or big sponsored events, the way I perceive them, because I was a little bit like, do people really want this? I don't know. Like, I know what I want, but do people, air quotes?
Mhm.
And I think what I found is that people are amazing and they do find value in things and they do find value being together. And I know I've said that probably 5 times now, but make a note because it's really important. And I'm not saying everyone should work in an office because that's not my message. It's just, I think the time together can be quality. So focus on that.
Great. And I think that connection, that time together, it could be virtually, it could be on person. People find value in that.
I would kind of wonder almost now, is it better? Let's say if you're stressing about how much should we have people back at an office, what, how often, et cetera, when, where. I would be thinking about the quality of the time together maybe isn't even about the work. And I'm probably not the first one to say this. It's about being together and building the bonds and stuff, because that's one thing that's a little bit harder to do, maybe on video or remote in some way. And then, like, the work itself, maybe, because I mean, I think the big question is I can do my work from remote. Why do you want me in an office? So if you're going to have people
Mm.
together, make it meaningful, is that is something I think about a lot.
And there was a leader that told me go back to school, you learned a lot in recess when you didn't talk about school, but you talked about life and you connected with people. And you reminded me of that quote. It's make it fun, make it a way that people can talk about themselves in a safe place and they can connect, really
Yeah.
connect. So I love the concept. And you have published this 6 years
Mhm.
ago and you've graduated 6 years ago. So, how did the Penn CLO program change your life? What impact did it have?
I think first I would start with my identity. I think I embraced being a social scientist and a researcher. And before that, I felt I was a dabbler and maybe an imposter. I was curious, but I wasn't official. And I think now I can say without a question, I'm a social scientist, I'm a researcher, I'm a scholar practitioner. And those phrases, I feel like my feet are on the ground and those are me. And I really appreciate that the method of learning and the way you go through the program allows you to, like, put that mantle on and own it. But I would say I was running some type of a program at work after my first block, and I was completely different in the way I felt about being the leader of the program. And I don't know if it says something about me, but I felt that it was of a, like I said, a mantle or a cloak that I now wrapped myself in that was real. So that was one thing. And then I would say the people that I met and the other scholars that were there with me, my classmates, and the way the block program works, and I'm not sure that everybody who's listening to this would know, but there's people coming in and people coming out all the time, which is amazing because you're exposed to people who are from different places than you geographically, contextually, conceptually, and also their jobs are and their life experiences are so different. You're sitting next to a military leader, a private school, charter school founder, and a banker from a place halfway across the world. So, and that's just one table that you sit at a day. And then you go to another one and talk to other people during the course of the program. So I think that is eye-opening, it's exciting, and you build lifetime connections as well. So I think that's really wonderful, and that's really impacted me too. And then I think I look at my work, I have a stronger foundation in research, or I can go find research if I have a theory. And so I don't think I'm violating an ethical research code by saying there's a bit of experimentation going on in my workplace on a regular basis, depending kind of on what's happening there. And I think that that's really exciting and fun for the people that that I work with and the other employees too, because I really like the idea of democratizing the research of ourselves.
So I find your three main takeaways from going into the Penn CLO program. The first is I was amazed by that topic of we successful people sometimes feel like imposters. And then you change your identity and you begin to own that identity of, okay, I'm a researcher, I'm a scholar, a practitioner, I can do this. The second is the power of the network, a community, a tribe where you can feel safe, but you can also ask different questions and learn from everybody. And the third is it's a way of life. You've
Yeah.
said you become a curiosity
Yeah.
enthusiast, and you begin to ask different questions for life.
Yeah, thank you for summarizing that. I'm going to write that down. You do such a good job of telling me what are my main themes in life. That's fantastic.
So when we were preparing for this podcast, you said a phrase that struck with me and I found very interesting. There are some powerful experiences that I think about every week. So you tend to go back to those blocks, to those key learnings. What were those powerful experiences that you think about every day?
Oh my goodness. It's so funny. I do think about a few of them. One of them, I think I had mentioned to you, was this timeline experience. And we were broken into groups of four, and it was a very limited amount of time to share like some highs and lows from your life. And the exercise was people had to really listen to you, and then they had a very small amount of time to ask you a few
Mhm.
questions. And for some reason, the format and the way that it happened and the people that I was with, it was so powerful. We were crying and we were laughing and we were just like, I felt like I knew those people. And they only gave me like 10 minutes of their life and then 5 minutes for questions. So I think learning about other people is, I naturally love that. But finding new ways to do things like that, or to have different exercises that help bring out the core of who someone is or understand them better. That was that one event, but I think about that one quite a bit because I think about how would I apply that now? How can I do that without having playing the game right now, but how can I do that with this person that I'm with? Another one was team formation. Dr. Annie McKee, was teaching us about culture. And part of it was when you start forming a team, what are some of the things that you could do that would accelerate your team? And we were broken into many different teams. And on my team, we took her PowerPoint deck on how to do it and we went through it step by step. And we saw that the other groups were already onto their group project because we were formed into a team to do a group project. And we didn't do that. We took the time. So it's go slow to go fast. Our project was amazing. We were asked to reform as a team later to do a simulation and regrouped and went over our values and how we want to talk to each other and respect and roles and things like that. I'll never forget that because we had such an incredible performance as a newly formed team in several different ways. And I think that was a very meaningful experience because one, it was pretty emotional, not in a bad way, but just like it was intense. And so then you remember things. And I think that's one thing about learning at CLO. Sometimes there are emotions involved because you're asked to do something or you're in a conversation. It's live. Everything's live. There's not
Mm.
a lot of sitting back and not participate. I mean, you could, but you'd be missing out. Anyway, so I think about that experience. And there's like probably 3 or 4 others that if it's not weekly, it's every couple weeks where I think I draw from it. And I don't know that other people do that, but I can't imagine you wouldn't because it's a powerful growth accelerator to go through that program for yourself.
I love the examples and being a student in the program, I know where you're coming from. It's so powerful. You tend to think this is a very simple activity, yet so profound. And it's because of the people. It's so many interesting people are in that space and we trust each other. We can really be our authentic selves there. So I think that is a powerful experience. So, Janet, I'll try to summarize what we've talked about today. I've had tons of fun. First, I love the concept of life is not a horizontal line. It's following your curiosity. It has different inflection points, and you begin not following a passion only, but following your curiosity. And then you can have it all. If you want somebody to achieve something, make sure that person is busy because you can carve it out in your schedule. You can do it and you can juggle amongst a lot of responsibilities as you have shown us, but it's having fun in the process. It's enjoying the ride. It's exploring what you're curious about and then going back to work and having fun at work. So, for leaders, you found very profound findings that these structured activities can be very powerful for people. It's related to more engagement, it's related to trust, it's related to that resourcefulness that people bring to the corporate setting. And also, people are engaged and are excited about those types of activities. They crave that connection, that genuine connection, if it's structured in the right way. So it takes into planning and getting back to the program. It's a program that can change your identity. Sometimes we think, okay, I'm getting into one of the best universities in the
Yes.
world, one of the best programs. It can change you. And there's tremendous benefits of joining the program. And you can see in my smile, I'm also enjoying the program as well. It has changed my life. And while you were talking, I was just remembering some of those key moments, and that's profoundly powerful. So I have a last question that I want to ask. I consider myself a collectionist of quotes, of mantras, of powerful advice. What's the best advice maybe you received, or it's a piece of advice you usually give to others that's your best pearl of wisdom?
Oh gosh, I don't know if it's my best pearl of wisdom, but it's something that I think about a lot. And it goes something like this. If you're going to be working hard, you might as well be working with smiling people or people who are smiling. And I think of that from two perspectives, which is me. Am I a smiling person? And I don't mean forced smiles, obviously. I mean, am I genuinely someone who's positive and engaged in the activity? And then also, who am I surrounding myself with and what is their energy? So it's a kind of a quick way to think about those concepts, I think.
I love the concept. So, Janet, thank you so much for this time. This has been a truly inspirational and motivational session. So, for anybody who would like to contact you or follow you and your work, what's the best way to do so?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn if you wanted to connect with me there, and then we can figure out what's the best way for us to communicate. I can't say I post a ton, but there I am. Julio, thank you so much for having me. It's been delightful, and I appreciate you and the program for this opportunity.
So this was great, but it's a wrap. Thanks again, Janet, and thanks for everyone joining the Penn Chief Learning Officer podcast. Until the next time.